Hello, everyone. Eric here, Bailey here. We are going to give our review, our non spoiler review of Uncharted, the video game adaptation. I looked back, Bailey, and it was first talked about in 2008. So it has been a
Ooh,
long road for Uncharted to make it to your movie screen. Many different directors, many different writers, actors dropping in and out. Mark Wahlberg, once supposed to play Nathan Drake, ultimately playing Sully instead. It's gone through a journey off screen. Now it is here on screen. The big difference between Bailey and I talking about this movie is I have never played a single Uncharted game. Bailey, you have played the Uncharted games.
yes, I haven't played all of them, but
Mhm.
I've played enough of them to see where the movie and the game sort of deviate from each other in
Right,
major
right.
ways, or with sometimes where they were very faithful. That did happen. There were plenty of Easter eggs for the game fans.
Yes, I won't describe you as Uncharted super fan number one, but you've got some background with them versus me. So this is our different perspectives here. Look, this movie is Nathan Drake, Tom Holland, young man. His brother took off when he was a kid. Now he is living in New York as a bartender. He's sort of a petty thief. He gets approached by Mark Wahlberg's Sully, who says, "Hey, there's billions of dollars in gold that we can go find." It's connected to his brother's past as well. And off they go on a globe-trotting journey. And I do know, look, again, I haven't played the games, but I'm aware of them. And they've described how this is an origin story. This is the early days for Nathan Drake, hence casting someone younger than you might depict him usually. Bailey, what are your overall thoughts? What was your first impression of Uncharted, the motion picture?
I will say that I had a fun time watching it. I know that some people have been kind of down on the movie, and I don't think it's a perfect movie by any means, but I had a good time watching it. I enjoyed it. And whether or not it's good, I think having a fun time should also be a measure of whether or not a movie is actually good, you know?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I think it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly similar, and maybe slightly more positive. I had no expectations going into this. I didn't think the trailers looked awful, but they also kind of were like, eh. Um, but I had a really good time watching this, and it definitely the feel of it, the vibe of it was sort of a little bit of a throwback. It felt like a silly, fun kind of action movie you might have gotten a lot of in the '90s. And it's well done in what it's trying to do. There are definitely some eye rolling moments, but more than often than not, I was like, "You're trying to be enjoyable, and you're succeeding on that
Yeah,
level," and
definitely agreed.
that's saying something, right? Because
Yeah,
often
I
people
think
didn't do
so.
that. So let's dig in a little bit here. What were sort of maybe some of your favorite aspects of the movie, whether it be characters or situations, what sort of jumps out? Again, we're not going to get into spoilers, guys, as far as like big third act twists, but what stands out is like, oh, this is what I really liked in the film.
Well, I will say that there was much ado about Tom Holland being cast because he doesn't look like the grown-up
Mhm.
Nathan Drake we know and love. But I will say you do meet adolescent Nate in Uncharted 3 in a backstory that I guess they've retconned a little bit, but whatever. I'll talk about that later. But you see an adolescent version of him. And if we're looking for an in between of his adolescent self and his adult self, I think Tom Holland was actually very well cast. Plus, he's awesome at stunts. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the movie, like it's a fun action movie. A lot of it really like relies on how fun the stunts are. And like you can tell it's him for a lot of them. Like you can see his face as he does the cool like flips and stuff. I think he did a great job. I think there was a lot of good casting. I thought the villains were fantastic. Antonio Banderas as Mankata, Tati Gabrielle as Braddock. I think they were both so like intimidating and scary in their own ways. They really committed to their roles. It was a lot of fun. I also thought this is my last thing. I'm gonna do three. Chloe in the movie is very accurate to the game. She has a signature move in the game
Mhm.
that she pulls out in the movie a couple times. And I'm not going to say what because I don't want to spoil anything, but fans of the game will know what I'm talking about. Uh, She does her signature move, and I would say she is most accurate to her personality in game. I thought they very lovingly portrayed her on screen.
Yeah, it's funny with Tom Holland because if you watch a lot of the behind the scenes on the Spider-Man movies, he can do a lot of those flips and stuff. I'm not, not
Yeah.
like insane, but very impressive. He has a dance background and he can
Yeah, he was
move.
Billy Elliot.
Yeah, yeah. And so he actually does like some cool Spider-Man moves, but he's usually wearing the mask. I realize I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt today. So you don't even see that. So yeah, in this he gets to really show that off clearly. Look, Sony very clearly said, "Hey, Tom Holland, you know how you're really charming and likable in the Spider-Man movies? Why don't you do that again in the Uncharted movies?" But it works. He is charming and likable. And I actually really liked the dynamic with him and Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg is a really funny actor to me because I think he has to be cast right, because there are some things when he's not cast right and he doesn't work at all. But then there's sometimes like The Departed where it's like, oh my God, Mark Wahlberg's great in that. And they cast him well in this, like just as far as like the bickering, the bantering, the dynamic between the two of them. They play off each other well in the movie. And even though you can feel like the calculation as far as like, we want this to be funny banter, it's working almost all the time. So I really like that. And then, yeah, I agree with you about the all the sporting characters. I really liked as well. We've got the villains who I know both these characters were brand new for the film, but I think they really work well. Tati Gabrielle, a lot of people I think would know her from Sabrina or You. I knew her from The 100, but I really like her and kind of how they make her just sort of, she's just almost like a cat ready to pounce all the time. And then Chloe, I was looking up Sophia Ali because I didn't know if I'd seen her or anything. I saw her in Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. I really like her as well.
Oh my gosh. I should have looked her up too. I love that movie. Why didn't I place her?
Yeah.
So awful. I was just so like, I so bought her acting that I couldn't imagine her in any other role. That's what it was.
But yes, yeah, much less in a Truth or Dare movie. But yeah, she's really good as well. Just yeah, it's creating this sort of core group that really kind of takes you to the movie, and I think it does a very good job with it. And then let's talk a little bit about like the action. I don't think I mentioned Ruben Fleischer directed this movie. He directed Zombieland and Venom. So clearly he's like done some big stuff before us on the action front. What do you think of sort of the action set pieces in the film?
I thought they were good. I mean, you can see the cargo plane one in the trailer. That
Yeah.
is a very like direct reenactment of something that happens in the game. And I thought it looked cool as heck. It was really well done. I think there were rad explosions, which I don't think there are enough explosions in action movies these days. Just stuff blowing up. I love that. And I think it was directed really well. You can tell that Ruben Fleischer was involved because not only was the action like really well filmed, you could tell he was having fun filming it, but he always has like kind of a fun touch. But Zombieland, Venom, and now Uncharted have that in common where they have like a lot of levity. They're not afraid to get a little funny in their action and just be like, this is going to be a fun time for everybody. And I think he did a good job.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I had a funny experience. I was sitting next to someone who was did a couple of like come on's reactions, but it's funny with the action movie. It's on that level that like the Fast and Furious movies now operate at, which is bigger than life and ridiculous if you take a step back and describe it, but in a way that you feel like they're winking, like they know it's ridiculous. And some people won't go for that, but obviously a lot of people will, hence the success of the Fast and Furious movies. And I enjoyed it on that level for sure. Like it's going big. And even when it gets a little cartoony, like I felt like it's tonally appropriate for this movie. Like it feels like, oh, you lost me because you were doing a deadly serious movie and now you did this over the top action. It's like, no, it's all pretty heightened. I mean, even the fact that we should mention that I will say it's funny. We don't know a lot about Nathan Drake's like missing years between we see him as a kid and we see him as an adult. Clearly, he keeps thieving and he's great at research. They never explained that he became like a trained gymnast and parkour guy, but I went with it. I was like, why not?
They had him doing exercises in his inexplicably huge New York loft.
Right.
So that to establish like he's capable of climbing. We know Nathan Drake is great at climbing, but they needed to establish it for us in the movie as well, that he had that skill set.
Yes,
Didn't want any accusations of being a Mary Sue.
that's very true. Very true. He put in the hours, guys. He put in the shirtless rope climbing hours. And then look, there are definitely some silly things in this movie. You and I were texting a little bit afterwards because we saw it in separate auditoriums, and there's a little bit of, I'd say, egregious hand holding in this movie where they want to.
Yeah, it definitely treats the audience like we're very stupid at a couple points for sure.
Yeah.
No question. There were parts where I literally like just had to try not to laugh because they like remind you in voiceover as something that was said at the beginning that you clearly were supposed to remember at the end, or they'll have like notes with giant clear lettering that they feel the need to do slow, careful voiceover of every single time. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, guys, I'll give you that. That's fine. Because you know what? The movie showed a cat, and at no point was the cat ever in danger. So that made it up for me. That was fine.
That's a strong point. Yeah, Bailey and I pretty much simultaneously were texting each other about how we both laughed at the fact that Nathan is constantly reading these postcards from his brother that are very short, and you can read very clearly on screen that have voice, like it's as if it's a voiceover saying like there's leftovers in the fridge, like as if we couldn't read,
Yes. Yeah. And it's on screen for such a long time, too.
Right.
Like, I think even if you're like looking down at your phone and then look up, you would have time to read the note perfectly fine. But
Right.
they just wanted to be sure, just in case, that you got that really important information that he wishes his brother were here, etc.
Exactly. I will say, as I'm saying this, it's like, and people might think, is this damning with faint praise? But I don't mean it to be. It's like, I was watching this movie, I'm like, this will be a movie that if you're 10 years old and you see it, 10 years from now, you'll be like, I loved Uncharted. Like, it's hitting those right notes. It's like a movie that, again, why people look back on certain like silly fun adventure movies from their childhood, I think, and are like, that was so fun. Just because, yeah, it's doing it. And that hand holding, it almost felt like it went with the territory for me,
Yeah. Yeah, that seems valid. That seems, yeah. They did just enough swears that a 10-year-old would be excited, but nothing too major.
Yes.
No blood on screen, nothing scarring.
Exactly. And nothing too harsh in the swearing,
Yes.
Keeping it okay. Anything else like jump out at you that you felt like, oh, that was like a highlight, or oh, I wish the movie could have done without that?
Well, are we going into like critiques at this point?
Yeah.
I do have a couple. I will say that again, liked the movie. I can't stress that enough. Had a very fun time. I do think that Mark Wahlberg, like you said, he kind of needs to be well cast. And I'm not necessarily sure he was in this movie because the way he played Sully, he played him like an adult Nathan Drake. Like Sully in the game is very like gruff and like cigar chomping and like just like a mentor type figure. And in this, he was just sort of like quippy and charming, like we know Nathan Drake to be. And so it was sort of like he and Tom Holland had fairly interchangeable personalities with very slight differences. And so I thought maybe he had like developed an idea for how he wanted to play the character in that initial iteration of the movie in 2008. Right. And then when they finally started shooting it was like, well, I've already done the character work. We'll just keep it the same. Right. And that I thought maybe kind of.
I mean, yeah, he was once going to play Nathan. So yeah, he's just like, here's how I'm playing it. It's definitely valid that they are very similar in their vibe. Again, I don't have the games to compare to be like, this is how Sully should be. But it definitely felt like they are two sides of the same coin in this movie, how they're having that back and forth.
Like chemistry wise, that really worked. Like they were great together. But if you're looking for the dynamic that Sully and Nate have in the game, you're not going to find it in the movie.
Right. Anything else? I'll ask you, just because you know the games more. Was there something that jumped out as like, oh, that doesn't feel right, or I wish there was more of something?
I mean, I did find it odd that they retconned Sully and Nate's meeting, because the thing is, they established their backstory, their little meet cute in one of the best games of the series, Uncharted 3. Nate is a teenager. He tries to steal Sir Francis Drake's ring from a museum in Colombia. He's caught by the bad guys. Sully rescues him and takes him under his wing. And then like he grows up and then they have their grown-up adventures. And it's just like it's such a good game that so many people liked. I think IGN gave that one a 10 out of 10,
Mm.
that like changing that one and then like specifically feels so like weird, like mean to the series to me. Like they
Right.
did a good job like picking and choosing things and making it its own adventure and not just copying the story of one of the games. And that I liked. But by turning it into the way that Sully and Nate meet, they erase one of the best moments of the series.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so I was like not a fan of that per
no, no, I
se.
understandable, understandable. I don't know it all, so because maybe it was funny, by the way, not knowing the games, but knowing, some of the imagery and whatnot. There are certainly Easter eggs to the games in here, and a couple of them are so blatant that I'm like, that's an Easter egg to the game, just because of the way it's presented. Versus some of the stuff I like hearing some of their stuff you're talking about, like Chloe's move. I don't know what you're talking about, so which I like. I like when they
I'll
mix
clarify
up.
for you after this
Okay,
so that we don't spoil anyone.
I like when they mix up the Easter eggs with the like, don't miss this one versus the more subtle. As we head toward the end of this review, the end of this movie, it's very clear they want to do sequels. Not shockingly, yes, there are some credit scenes, guys. You'll probably want to watch, but
Yeah, they definitely set up a sequel.
they definitely set up a sequel. Would you want to see a sequel? Is this this version of Uncharted? Did this movie make you think, yeah, let's see more of it?
I think, if it came out in the summer and it was like a hot day and I needed to get inside for like a couple hours and sit in some like crisp corporate air conditioning and eat some popcorn, I'd happily sit down and watch it.
I'd I'd be open to it too. Yeah, just it feels like yeah, just like this could be a fun silly series to have another installment of every couple years. Hopefully not every what was it 14 years, however long it took in
Oh yeah.
development.
Oh my gosh. 2008 was 14 years ago. Oh my God.
Yes. I think they'll try to pick up the pace on that.
Yeah.
So what would you give this movie, Bailey, overall out of 5 stars?
Out of 5 stars, I think, considering how good the chemistry is between the two leads and how great the acting is in general and how fun it is, but compared to what I know about the games and how it stacks up against those, I would give it 3 stars.
Mhm.
Knocking off a couple for maybe not necessarily respecting the source material as much as I would love, and a few of the other sillier points that we both noticed.
Yeah.
But I think it stood on its own as a movie, which I think is very important for a video game movie, and I had a good time watching it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good to use a very cliche term. It's a good popcorn movie. It delivers on that side of things. Again, the very likable cast helps a lot, and the energy is really good. It moves really well. So yeah, I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5. Again, having no expectations and no preconceived notions because I didn't play the game probably helped. But yeah, I had a good time with it. It certainly has its flaws, and it certainly has some cheesy moments, but I think in a pretty endearing way. That if
Yeah.
you're in the right mood for this type of thing, it definitely can deliver an enjoyable time for all. Well, not all, for some. Well,
Most.
yes, yes.
Half.
So
For
we'll
half.
see. We'll see how it does. We'll see if there'll be more Uncharted movies in our future. But thanks, guys, for joining us for this review. We'll have
Thank
plenty
you.
more coming here at Fandom. Thanks, guys.
Bye.